All right, here we go. As I always start these broadcasts, it's Friday and it's always good. Now, I don't know where you are. We are in Winnipeg. If you don't know where Winnipeg is, because I know there's guys that tune in from all over North America here, it's actually amazing. It's so cool that there are guys all over North America that are like, let's go, let's take our walk with God to another level. Let's find the change that I've been aching for. Let's embolden our faith. Let's grow. Anyways. I just think it's amazing, and to be honest, I'm always humbled by people just tuning in because I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody from Winnipeg who God stirred me up through a very hard situation in my life and said, I want you to share some things. And so, yeah, I've been a pastor, business guy. Like, I've done some things, I've led in churches, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is just me sharing my experience. And I'm so thankful that other people are along for the ride. So if you're joining me live, I'd love for you to just let me know. Always encourage comments. It's amazing when you can actually see people. I can't actually see people when they're commenting. I don't know if there's probably a trick and a way to do it. If I had my phone going, maybe I'd be better at it, but I got too many things going on. So, but I do love to have people say hi, whether you're watching live, maybe put live, replay. And if you are and if you're watching either live or replay, I'd love comments. I love questions. I love things that stand out. Why? Because I love reading them. I love to see what's resonating, but other people, when they look at it, other guys, when they watch the same thing, can see comments, and it can help them to learn, to just reinforce what they're hearing too. Now, I did say I was in Winnipeg, so let me explain. I was getting down that path, and then I took a left turn into being thankful for all of you. But we're getting hammered with the snowstorm today. Like, it's bad. I'm not in a place where I can actually show you, but man, it's not awesome right now. So anyways, wherever you are, I hope that you're in a better condition than we are. Things will clear up. We're used to it, but it is happening. I know my friends down in Texas a while ago had a couple of days off because of snow. So if I sent you a picture of what we were looking at outside here, you'd probably laugh a little bit. Anyways, thank you for joining. Welcome to the Hero Collective podcast, everybody. It's great to have you. We are getting into our series on neuro prayer. We introed it last week, and this is something that I'm super excited to just unpack more and more, because this whole Hero Collective podcast and the messages and the things that we share here, ultimately all of them are designed to be pointing us to see us find transformation in our lives. Why? Because we long for it. I've said this in other areas, but I believe, like, one of our basic human needs, one of the reasons why, well, from a biblical standpoint, one of the reasons why we don't like staying the same is because you remember back in Genesis chapter 1, God spoke a dominion mandate into us, into humanity, into you and I. You have a dominion mandate. What was it? Take dominion. Right from the get-go, God knew, and he imparted in us that we were to be the head and not the tail. Now, don't take that as some crazy word of faith, comment. What I'm trying to suggest to you is that basically God spoke dominion into you, which is why we don't like being under the power or the sway of anything, including bad habits, wrong thinking, or things that when we see situationally things in our lives, or I should say, we continue to have a fight on the inside of us that is because of this dominion mandate. Okay. Now, personal development would tell you that you've got a personal value. We all have these innate needs, and one of them is to make progress, is to progress. You know where that's from. I just told you. It's from the Bible. It's from God. He breathed it into humanity, that we aren't to be under the sway, under the power of anything. And we're not good like that. We're not good being bound up, right? What can happen is, though, we can adopt the victim mindset, in which case we just sort of relent. But the journey to victimhood usually goes through a lot of different situations and thinking that eventually you land in victimhood because there's no other way for you to kind of get through life continuing to have a victorious dominion mandate, the idea that I can get through this and I can progress and we can move forward. And instead we end up relying on a victim mentality so that we can actually even live in the world while putting up with the discouragement and the stuff that isn't working. I don't know if that's for somebody, but it's not in my notes to talk about, but we're talking today about neural prayer. Why? Because the art of spiritual transformation, the science and the art of spiritual transformation. I love reading books like, I showed you this last week, Clean Up Your Mental Mess. This is Dr. Carolyn Leaf. She is a doctor. She's a neuro, she's not a neurosurgeon, but she's a neuro clinician, basically, very, very accomplished. This is a clinical book about how to change your brain. This one's an interesting one, How God Changes Your Brain, another very clinical book, actually backed by research and science. These are the types, because this is the avenue I've been playing around in, and I started to realize that so many of the things that God shows us in His Word and things that I've employed in my life that I actually found change through, they're rooted in science, but they're based in the Bible, and nobody was teaching them to me. I didn't find them easily in church, and so that's why we're here. We're here to help men find transformation through hearing God, experiencing God, and discovering their unique identity. And as I said last week, there is a three-step process, three-principled process with numerous steps involved that I want to walk through, because as I saw it presented in this book, Dr. Carolyn Leaf has a practice called neurocycling. And as I was digging into it and learning about it and understanding it, I started to realize so much of what's in there is what we talk about in this group and the tools we use, things like using your imagination, praying in HD, right? Journaling, paying attention to the thoughts and what's going on the inside of us, the ideas of confession and repentance. You'll be amazed that true confession and true repentance, biblically speaking, how they are so vital to us transforming and actually changing our brain. That's what we're going to get into today. And I introed everything last week. I said that these three principles is to gather your thoughts, to process your thoughts, and then to rebuild your thoughts. And those are the three basic pillars of how to find transformation. But inside of that, in the process that we're going to talk about, I'm actually going to rename them. I'm going to rename gather and process and rebuild to 3 A's. Attend, assess, and architect. Got it? Attend, assess, and architect. Today we're going to talk about attending. Attend. Why it's important in this process of, as Dr. Carolyn Leaf would talk about, gathering. Okay, the gathering stage of healing and the gathering stage of finding ourselves free from bad habits and stinking thinking and anxiety and depression and all these things. Essentially, it's the science of how to change our minds, how to change our brains. Roman's been telling us that we're not to be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be transformed. How? By the renewing of your mind. We're going to make that connection today and over the next few weeks. And today we're talking about the gathering stage, which I'm renaming to attend, the importance of attending. Neuro prayer starts, we're going to go to neuro prayer kindergarten today. Everything you learned about how to start the transformation process you learned in kindergarten, okay? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be here for another 10 minutes. I'm going to throw some principles at you, and then we're going to cut it off for next week. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'd love to hear from you. If you are listening on Spotify or one of the podcast platforms, herocollective.com. We're on Facebook. Facebook.com/groups/A Hero Collective is where you can find us. And of course, if you're inside the group, you can make some comments. Okay. Everything you need to know about the transformation process getting started and attending, we learned in kindergarten. What does it mean to attend, or in the other verbiage we're using, to gather our thoughts, to pay attention to what's going on the inside of us? I'm going to talk about how do we do that? How do we attend to ourselves? How do we attend? How do we start this process? All right, you ready? Here is the 4 principles, 5 maybe principles of how to attend, how to start paying attention and attending to ourselves. Okay, first one, we have to show up. So again, imagine you're going to kindergarten. You can't really learn anything from kindergarten unless you show up. We have to show up first. Second of all, when we're in kindergarten, we're always asked to pay attention. Okay, we got to pay attention. Thirdly, tell the truth. That's the third principle of going to school, right? Show up, pay attention, tell the truth. All right. The fourth one, clean up. We're always asked to clean up. Now that's kind of connected to paying attention. We'll get to that in a second. And the fifth one is the buddy system. How often were you in school? You had to walk through the hallways and you're kind of given a buddy, or you're on a field trip and you had a buddy that you had to kind of stay with, right? We're going to talk about the buddy system. Show up, pay attention, tell the truth, clean up, the buddy system. You ready? How does that relate to scripture, and how does that relate to us learning how to pay attention? You could call it self-awareness. You could talk being mindful. There's all of these thoughts, and all of these strategies or ways of talking about this strategy, they're out in the world right now. You could label them any way you want, but we're just going to talk about the simple idea of attending to ourselves. Why is it so important? Because the first stage of transformation, we have to actually know what's going on the inside of us, okay? A couple of anchor scriptures we're going to walk through today. You're going to hear me talk about 1 Thessalonians 5, 16 to 18. You're going to hear me talk about Romans 8, just in case you want to follow along. Give me a second. I'll tell you the address of Romans 8. It's going to be 28, 29, okay? We're going to talk about John 6:63, and we're going to talk about John 8:32, just in case you're making a list there. All right, first one, we have to show up. First principle of attending. If we're going to learn anything at kindergarten, if we're going to start the transformation process that we're talking about today, we have to show up. What do I mean by that? We have to decide that we want to change, and we have to decide that we're going to show up for ourselves. It's like you need to show up in the classroom for kindergarten. We need to show up for ourselves to learn about ourselves, learn about what's going on in our minds, learn about how we're feeling, learn about how to actually get attuned to what's going on. I said it last week, it's very interesting science. We have a subconscious state, we have a pre-conscious state, right? Then there's a conscious state, and our thoughts that slide from the subconscious into the conscious, they actually carry with them physical feelings. You know, the reason why you can get, if you want to use the word triggered, by smelling something or watching something that reminds you of a time in the past. Here's one for me. When I played so much hockey, and I remember in playoffs, okay? In the spring was always playoffs. It was always a heightened time. You're always ramped up and amped up for the game. And I remember that feeling of sort of excitement and anxiety before a game. Well, when it's spring, so the weather starts to turn, and I smell the rubber of a hockey arena, I immediately start to experience those feelings again. Why? It's because thoughts are connected to feelings. Actually, your memories store feelings, okay? So if we need to show up, the first thing we need to do to start the transformation process is to attend to ourselves. What do I mean by that? How do you attend to yourself? Well, you pay attention, you look, what's going on the inside of me, right? I need to actually decide to do that. So what am I deciding not to do then? To actually be thinking about what's going on the inside of it. I'm thinking about not distracting myself, right? I'm thinking about actually dealing with my stuff. Maybe that's the most important thing. Dealing with your stuff. What's the enemy of showing up? Pride. Pride says, I'm okay and everyone else is not, right? I think everybody is probably, unless you're a narcissist, everybody does have this level of like, I know I need to change on the inside of them. Showing up says, I'm burying my pride. You're praying about it and deciding that you're going to start to actually about okay. I'm going to see if I'm back. I will tell you what just happened in a minute. That is, I have never had that happen before. Okay, that recording looks fine. That recording looks fine. I'm assuming I'm back. I'm just going to try and scroll the comments here for a second. If you're watching live, can you just write a comment and tell me if everything, like maybe things paused and then we're back here? Can somebody let me know? I think we're okay online. Okay, I'll tell you what. I've literally never had this happen. So This is a Manitoba emergency alert. Manitoba Transportation Infrastructure has issued a hazardous road conditions alert due to high winds and blizzard-like conditions. So because of this snowstorm, they actually sent out like a all points bulletin alert, I guess, to all Manitobans, and somehow that affected something that is going on recording. We're going to jump back in here. I have no idea how this is going to work, but let's, geez, I think we're okay. I'm just going to assume we're okay. If we're not, I'll redo this again next week. So we need to pay attention. We need to attend to ourselves. What is the enemy of us attending to ourselves? Pride. Pride says, I don't need to change, and everybody else does. When we decide that we need to change, when we decide that it's important that we actually, yeah, I think we're good. When we decide that we actually need to change, sometimes we need to pray about it. Sometimes we need to just make a decision. Sometimes you need to tell somebody. But what you're doing, the first step is we have to decide that we're going to get in tune with what we're thinking and feeling about. Okay, next thing is, alongside that, is learning to pay attention. So part of showing up for ourselves is removing distractions that keep us from thinking about what's going on the inside of us. I talked about this last week, so I'm not going to talk a ton about it. Proverbs 4:23, start thinking about what you're thinking about. Start thinking about what your heart is doing. Start thinking about what your internal dialogue is. Why? Because that is the roadmap to finding when we're believing something that we shouldn't be believing that's causing the issues that we want to get over in our life. So here's our tips to paying attention. Find margin. Dedicate actual time alone, not in the car. Okay, the car's okay. Sit with the radio off, whatever. I would suggest to you, you find some time to actually sit and think. Think about that for a minute. How often do you think about it? How often are you away from distractions, away from your phone, and actually, I'm not even talking about reading the Bible. I'm talking about, even apart from the Bible, just thinking, meditating, getting in tune with what's going on the inside and starting to pay attention to what's going on. You have to devote some time. Tell yourself, I'm going to spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes thinking. You can call it praying if you want, but what I mean by that is just being aware, paying attention to what's going on the inside of you. Hopefully you already do this. You do this as a part of your quiet time, but this is a huge piece of the puzzle. First thing is we have to decide to show up for ourselves, decide we want to change, pray, and ask God for help with to get over our pride and say, Lord, I'm going to go on I see how these things in my life are cropping up, bad habits or stinking thinking that seems to be taking me around the same mountain. I'm going to decide that this is the day I'm going to change. Write it down in a journal, decide, and pray and ask God help. Ask God for help. We get over our pride. Then we need to devote time to pay attention to ourselves. Some of us, this comes easy. We do this all the time. Some of us do it too much, frankly. There's a healthy amount of time we should be given to our internal dialogue, okay? Self-awareness. But we have to learn to not distract ourselves with a podcast, music, radio, information, YouTube, video games, phones, scrolling, and just decide to put it all away. You might even find that you struggle to recover the ability to pay attention to yourself and focus on nothing but just your internal dialogue. But that's the next step. You have to find time to do that, okay? Thirdly, you have to settle that it's important that you tell the truth. What do I mean by that? It's when you begin to tune into your thoughts that you actually have the ability to tell the truth and not kid yourself about what it is that you're experiencing. What I mean by that is, we're men, right? We should never be scared. We should never be anxious. We shouldn't tell people we're sad, right? All of those things, those are bad things if we're men, right? No, they're not. If in order to be healthy humans, we need to learn how to tell the truth. Now, confession is a principle you're going to hear us talk about. Confession, true confession, biblical confession, isn't saying I'm sorry. Imagine a police officer brings somebody into interrogation who just robbed a bank, and they're asking for a confession. And all that person says is I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. That's not what a police officer is looking for. A police officer is looking for, on the night of December 5th at 7:30 p.m., I drove my car to they're looking for the truth. They're looking for someone to confess is someone who's telling the truth. Confession is truth-telling. Now, Romans 6:63, Jesus said, my words are spirit and they're life. John 8:32, John says that the truth shall set you free. It's the truth that will set you free. Tell me you haven't had this experience before. You've been in a room, maybe you're dealing with your kids or your spouse or whatever, and you push past the fear of letting yourself actually talk about what's really going on the inside of you. Maybe your fears, maybe it's something that's like, I know I shouldn't be feeling this, and you end up, you just get it out there. And other people feel empowered by your vulnerability to actually share the truth. If you're ever trying to mediate a conversation between two people and one person won't tell the truth, you know that there's no point in doing it. They won't go anywhere. But I know with my kids, my wife, my family, with mediating other things, with you can get two people to get over the fear, the lies that they believe, and the fear that self-protect and self-promote. That's what we do. When we won't tell the truth, all we're doing is we're self-protecting and we're self-promoting. We're self-promoting, right? If we self-protect by not telling the truth, we'll end up just not sharing something, or we lean away, or we make an excuse for something. When we don't just get to the raw truth of things, it's actually just fear. When we get over the fear and we tell the truth to ourselves and to other people, then we actually begin, the wind of the Spirit begins to blow. You've had this situation where two people are talking and saying and actually sharing the truth, and all of a sudden you can finally get to a place of resolution. All of a sudden, pretense falls away. People's hearts begin to open. It's exactly the same thing with you and God. When you show up for yourself, you start to learn to pay attention to how you're feeling, and then you actually tell the truth about it. God's Spirit can begin to move in your life. Now that's going to come, but telling the truth is absolutely vital. Sounds funny, but if we're going to overcome the father of lies, we need to tell the truth. The fourth thing, clean up. What do I mean by clean up? We need to start being able to clean up the thoughts, the emotions, to gather them. Like when I talk about telling the truth, part of that is the ability to start to process. Again, it's going to come next, but not even process yet, but just, journaling's a good tool for this. Start to actually get in tune with what we're thinking, why we're thinking it, and begin to actually gather them, clean up, begin to I don't want to say the word process because that will come, but this is obviously a fluid 3 pillars we're going to talk about: gathering, embracing, and then processing and building, attending, assessing, architecting. But in this process, we want to clean up. We want to begin to actually put our finger on the things, the thinking, the feelings that we're actually having, that we're talking about, we're telling the truth about. So those are kind of connected. And the fifth one, is the buddy system. In kindergarten, we get given the buddy system, right? And so the buddy system is accountability, right? Having the ability to have somebody that you can share with and start to process with is really important. Now, it's not vital, but it's so good. It's so good when we can learn to share with our spouse or a prayer partner or a buddy or whatever, and be at that place of accountability. Why? Because as we're going through this process, when we share that kind of stuff, when we have that kind of accountability, then it just changes the dynamic in us not being able to run and hide from the stuff that's going on the inside of us. Okay, I'm going to leave you with an example, and then we're done. I'm already a little bit longer than I wanted to today. About 2 weeks ago, I was sitting, and I came and I sat down, and I was sitting with one of my daughters, I have a 20-year-old daughter, and we were sitting and we were chatting, and she was struggling in the moment. We had a lot of kind of frenetic activity in the house with the small kids, and she was just like, and she was struggling. And for me, I'm just going to be really honest. So for me as a dad, I'm like, she's 20. How is she going to deal with real life if she can't deal with this situation? Like what's going on inside of her, or going on around her, right? She's talking about being stressed and it's overwhelming and all these things. And I'm like, come on. So this fix it dad thing, right? Was kind of kind of bugging me on the inside. Like I see her, 30 years down the road, and I'm like, she got to get this now, right? If she doesn't get this, this is a problem. And so you can see how this started to stir me up a little bit. I'm not necessarily the most compassionate, loving father. And then there's a dialogue that happens at the table. My daughter says something, and I said something that was that didn't validate her feelings. I didn't validate her feelings. In fact, I didn't validate her frustration or her anxiousness in that moment at all, which is totally wrong. And and in that moment, very responsibly, actually, she's like, you know what, Dad, that's not cool. I don't feel like you validated my feelings in that. I feel like you were kind of like trying to correct me there. Okay, she shared some stuff, and then she said, I don't want to deal with this right now, and she walked away. And I sat there, my wife looked at me, and I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, like that wasn't awesome. I'm like, really? And my first response was I wanted to justify it. Hey, I'm a dad. I'm trying to prepare my kids for life. She needs to grow up. She needs to whatever. And then the reality of it just hit me. Like, so that's maybe not necessarily untrue, but she didn't feel validated in that moment. She didn't feel heard. She didn't feel accepted. She didn't feel any of that. I didn't validate any of her feelings. So of course she's not going to feel anything else. So that's not the teaching time. That's not a teaching moment. And I realized that I was insensitive. The truth, I had to wrestle with the truth. And I had to wrestle with and I actually had to wrestle with the fact that I do that a lot. I actually do that a lot with my kids. And my girls actually tell me a lot, Dad, I don't feel like you validate my feelings. And I'm like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I came back to my daughter and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I'm being sincere. I recognize how I do this and how it doesn't serve you. And I verbalized that. I talked to her about it. I think I texted her, sent her a video too. We chatted about it a little bit. And I took the time to tell the truth to her. I was accountable to her because now this is out there. Now I have to do better at this, right? And I actually verbalized it. That is an example of what we're talking about here. Yes, it was situational, but I had to wrestle with the thoughts that were going on the inside of me. I had to show up for myself. I had to pay attention to what I was thinking and feeling, why I was thinking that. And then I had to confess it, tell the truth, actually share it. And then I had to share it with somebody else, which was help bring some accountability. And it was amazing how that actually helped bring us together. And of course, we're still on this journey, but now I'm on the process. I can feel being on the process to recognizing where I need to change that and do better in the future. All part of this that's an example of sort of the gathering stage of showing up, right? Putting pride aside, showing up and deciding you need to change, right? Paying attention, learning how to do that. Eliminating distraction is really important. Finding time to actually think and process. If it doesn't come easy, it comes easy for me. I don't really need to take a lot of time. I'm usually just doing it all the time. So for you, you might need to take some time, actually set a goal. I'm going to sit for 5 or 10 minutes and just think, right? We're going to talk about journaling in the future. That's a great exercise. Tell the truth. Be bold. Get over your pride. Tell the truth about what you're feeling. Right? Clean up. Put your finger on the very, sort of things that the emotions, the feelings, the fears that you're actually dealing with, and then actually share it with somebody. Whether it's situational or not, it's one thing, but just share it with somebody that these are the feelings that you're experiencing that you want to get over. And in that system, in this gathering stage, this is this place of just learning to be attuned and attending to yourself and what's going on the inside of you. Okay? All right. We're going to leave it here for this week. If you are interested in the Mechanics of Transformation series we did, I offered this last week, please put a comment below. I went through the mechanics of the fact that you are designed to change. You are designed to transform. You can find the transformation that you're looking for. You were designed for it by God. If you're interested in that, throw link, just say Mechanics of Transformation or put link in the comment below. And I will send that to you. I'll get that link to you. We will DM you. And I'm thankful that you joined us. Sorry for the little glitch here, but we will patch things together and we'll be back again next week to talk about the next step in the process, which is to process, to attend, and then to assess. We're going to talk about how to assess, and actually once you've gathered and gathered the truth of how you're feeling in the moment from that place of self-awareness, now how we're going to process it. And that's when things get really exciting, because that's where God starts to speak into our hearts and into our lives. See you next week, everybody. Have an awesome, awesome week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.